Howdy guys, welcome back to another video. Today, Greedy and I are going to be doing a cute little discussion video on what we think the top 10 cards of each type are in the U150. Now that I'm saying this out loud, we should have done like a top 10 overall, too, actually.
Do you want to do that too?
Nah, I think that's too much work. I've been at work for 10 and a half hours today. I'm ready to not be thinking.
Okay, so yeah, little stipulation. This is Pokemon that are kind of ubiquitous, like in a lot of different kind of decks. Like, for example, like if you think Magnezone is the best deck in format, then you could potentially say, oh, well, why isn't Magnezone itself like on this list? And it's just, well, Magnezone isn't only in one type of deck. These cards are all in multiple decks and are important to tons of different types of decks, you know?
Yep, and not only that, just because a card is in a lot of decks doesn't mean it's necessarily like the best card. We didn't just go down the line and say this card's in the most decks, so therefore it should be number one, and then this is second most, so it should be number two. These are based off of opinions, not on like straight up facts of total appearances.
So what we did is we each like made a list independent of each other, and then we have the results like side to side, so we're going to kind of compare and talk about why we think we have differences, but I think generally they'll be pretty close to each other.
Yeah, we literally haven't seen each other's lists. Grady told me his just so I could type them out real fast, but he has not seen mine. I've only seen his, but I haven't talked to him about his. So, to start things off, quite clear number one. Well, first of all, real quick overview of the top 10. There's only one difference. And that is, he's got the promo EV, and I've got unknown AOR / unknown R.
I think there was a pretty clear, like, top 9, and then there was, like, what should that weird 10th one be?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But despite, other than, like, slight ordering differences, that's the only actual different Pokemon, so.
Correct, yeah. I think Spiritomb is I think in terms of, like, the tier list, number 1, number 2 are way ahead of the pack, and then it drops down.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Spiritomb, Claydol are like S tier, and then everything else is like tiers after that.
Yeah. I think, so I once upon a time saw a thing that said they were considering banning Spiritomb once upon a time. Just because, you know, hey, it is like the best Pokemon. But think of a format with no Spiritomb.
Yeah, that's really scary, because then Donk decks and just super heavy item-based draw decks just get so much stronger.
Yeah, like you could just blast through your deck like turn 1, and then go turn 2 trump card and do it again.
Yeah.
I think that's terrifying. Spiritomb at least gives a little bit of check into, like, if your opening hand is nothing but items, you can lose because Spiritomb starts.
Right.
So you have to have a fair amount of supporters in there to balance out the fact of, like, you know, my opponent could start Spiritomb.
I think if Spiritomb wasn't in format, the format would get way faster, and a lot of slower, like, Stage 2 decks would get crowded out by just very fast, like, Donk kind of things. So
yeah, format would
I think it's kind of
suck.
necessary. It would be way faster, and games would be over way quicker, I feel like, and slow decks would just not be able to keep up.
It would also suck.
Yeah.
It would just straight suck. So I think Spiritomb is defining.
And then Claydol is just kind of self-explanatory. It's like your number 1 draw engine, and
it's the face of the format, baby.
Yep. So those are definitely top 2 by a wide margin.
And then I put Uxie over Lapras because Uxie is just your best, you know, as your next best draw. You have stuff like Scoop Up and AZ to reuse it over and over again. It's kind of the same way that, like, Oak is busted because you can reuse it.
I mean, you could say all those things about Lapras, too.
Right, but at the same point, like, Uxie's a more immediate effect. Lapras really needs Porygon 2 from Great Encounters
Right.
to be more successful, you know?
I think we're kind of splitting hairs here. I think, like, the next tier is obviously, like, Lapras, Porygon 2, Dunsparce, Uxie. That's, like, the tier 2 best, and how you arrange it within that tier is kind of where we differed a little bit, but...
Yeah. I mean, we both agree that Dunsparce is only good because of Spiritomb.
Right. I think a Spiritomb is not a thing. Dunsparce wouldn't really be played in anything, so...
Right, that is true. I put Porygon 2 higher strictly because of.
No, we have Porygon 2 at 4, both of us.
No, the other Porygon 2. I'm moving on.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I put that higher because of it is still a draw power thing, and it is still something that goes in every deck. You know, like if, for instance, Eevee, Dusknoir, and Porygon Z were higher, then why aren't we taking a 101 Dusknoir line into everything, or a 11 Eevee line into everything? Like Porygon 2 is still getting its spot. Sure, it's piggybacking off of the success of Porygon 2 from Great Encounters, but regardless.
I just think of it like, if Porygon 2 Great Encounters didn't exist, would you still play that Porygon 2? And I don't think you would.
I think you would. Because
I mean, maybe in some things, but definitely not in everything anymore.
Well, what's your next? So, if you're looking at draw power stage 2s, what's the next stage 1s? Sorry, what's the next best thing after Claydol? Or if like after Claydol and Porygon 2, what's the next best thing? Like even if Porygon 2 Delta Species wasn't a Porygon 2, let's say it was like a Dugtrio or something, right? Something just completely random and out there. I think you'd still play it because it's draw tree of 6, right?
I think you would play it in decks that don't value bench space that much, but I don't think it would go in like everything. I think it would be cut from like bench space heavy decks, you know?
Even if Porygon 2 Great Encounters didn't exist.
I think so. But I don't know, maybe not. But
I still think, well then I think it's, you know, the reason that we have it in there is because of the fact of like you can get away with one bench sitter like that on your bench, but you are so suspect to like a Lysander end play. Or like a Gust, or let's say Porygon 2 is not existent, right? So a Gust end play, they kill your Claydol, and now all of a sudden you have no bench sitters.
Yeah.
I think it leaves you open to that. So having 2 on your bench is almost needed because of that threat of them just killing your bench sitter and you having to find a way to recover it. So I think you would still play it just so you could have that bench sitter thing, because it is, in fact, it's nice that it is a Porygon 2, so it does go with the GE line. But it is, in fact, the next best draw supporter after those 2.
I mean, you look back at all the games we played, like, the number of times either of us has gotten that Porygon 2 out is, like, single digits. Like,
right.
it hardly ever comes into play. Like, I know it's a thing that you can always reach for if you need it, but it just hardly ever comes into play.
Oh, for sure.
So
I just think if Porygon 2G didn't exist, it would still go in every deck.
Yeah. So then the other 3, I think Dusknoir and Porygon Z are both much more situational, but I think they're pretty obvious choices for other ubiquitous Pokemon.
I think their success is tied hand in hand, to be honest.
Yeah.
Porygon Z is in a lot of decks, like lock decks and stuff like that as well. It is in 11 decks, whereas Dusknoir is only like in 4. So it does go, Porygon Z does go with other things, but I think we as deck builders, you and I, aren't taking full advantage of Dusknoir's potential.
You think it should be in like other things?
I think it's a reasonable thing to say that you could theoretically take a 101 or a 111 line into nearly everything.
That's fair.
Just because, like, you know, we're building Dusknoir right now as like it's in stuff like Cradily and
just spread decks.
And Empoleon, just because Empoleon and Dusknoir was a thing once upon a time. But I think it could be abused in other decks too, just because now all of a sudden 80 damage becomes, oh, let me go ahead and move that down to a Claydol and then take another knockout on something else.
Right.
It makes, like, if it gets teched into a lot more decks, it makes Max Potion so much more valuable as a card.
That's true.
So I think we're just not taking advantage of it.
Okay, that's fair. But I think our top 10 were pretty similar. I don't have too many qualms with your list or anything.
Yeah, I think Unknown's just a little bit more splashable than Eevee. That's the only reason I would include it. But
yeah.
Eevee promo, if you were to go to top 15, definitely one of them.
Fair enough.
There's nothing like it. So.
Okay.
Moving on to Grady supporters, and then my supporters.
Whoa, we're gonna have words already.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
So
okay.
I decided to lump Lysander and Guzma, and Grady didn't, but that's something for another day.
Wow.
Yeah. What is your first qualm, sir?
Well, obviously, trump card, you don't have as number 1.
No, I have a number 3.
I just think that's the most impact. You think about, like, over the course of a game, like, which individual supporter you play has the biggest effect. I don't know how you don't think that it's trump card. Like,
Okay,
trump card turns are like the most important supporter turns of any of them, in my opinion.
correct. I would agree that when you play trump card, it does have the most impact on those turns. However, Hex Maniac can singularly win games on its own.
I mean,
When I think of a card, I think of something that like doesn't need other cards to make it better. You know, Hex Maniac literally just like you can win games by hexing 3 turns in a row and GG. Like, and where's your trump card in that situation, right? Like, in those turns, like the winner didn't win by ever trump carding. Like, and quite frankly, you don't need to trump card. You could, if trump card didn't exist, yes, decks would be built a little bit differently. You would probably see more of like oddity recovery cards, stuff like Promo Celebi EX, Bunnelby. You know, that's Brock's Grit. You'd see a lot of other weird sort of recovery cards. But at the same time, Hex Maniac, like I said, by itself wins games.
I just feel like another way to look at this, I think, is like hypothetically, let's say your opponent plays an Imposter Oaks Invention, and like a thought experiment is like, which supporter, if I had to pick any, do I really not want to be prized?
Right.
And I think a lot of the times I'm like, oh shit, if he prizes my trump card here, I'm fucked because I don't have any way to get these, these scoop ups back, these lasers back, whatever the fuck I need for whatever deck I'm playing at any given time.
That's true.
And if you, like hypothetically, if you prized a Hex Maniac, I'm like, well, okay, this is bad, but I'll probably dig it out at some point, and I still have goop. I don't know. That's just one way. That's what I was thinking about with this too.
That's true, and that's a fair point too. It's a fair point, and I get it. And that's why I think it's kind of funny that we didn't put them number 1, number 2. We switched to number 1, number 3 on ours, but
yeah.
But hey. I get both of our points, and it makes sense. I mean, we can both say that they're must-haves inclusions. They're very, very important cards, but
yeah.
But anyways,
okay.
Moving on.
I really just want to hear your rationale for Sycamore and Juniper at 2, because I think there's just so much good draw and shuffle draw already. I don't quite get why you put them so high, I guess.
Because they're in every deck. Like,
I mean,
I know that we said that wasn't going to be our rationale, but like they're definitively the best draw supporters in the game, and this format's all about blasting through your deck as quick as possible.
Yeah, but you don't do that with draw supporters.
You kind of do though. Like Professor Juniper and Sycamore are such cornerstones of decks.
Oh.
I think they're just cornerstones. Like Lysander and Guzma, like yes, like super, super good for dragging stuff up, but there's a lot of... I mean, okay, so the same can be said about Lysander Guzma, that can be said about Professor Juniper Sycamore. Professor Juniper Sycamore, there are other good draw supporters. Lysander Guzma, if they didn't exist in the format, you'd still have plenty of ways to do Lysander-like effects. You have Gust of Wind, Double Gust, what's the POW hand extension, even like Pokemon Reversal, Pokemon Catcher, you could tech 1/1 Ninetales lines in, you could tech, there's another one, 1/1, there's another one when you evolve it, it does another thing.
Lycanroc?
Lycanroc, well, I mean, that's, you lose your turn.
Oh, that's a GX, right.
There's stuff like Heatmore, there's stuff like Carnivine, stuff that like attacks and brings it up. There's, even like the soft ones like Escape Rope, Warp Point, that sort of thing. So I don't know, that's why I think Professor Juniper and Sycamore, the fact that like no matter what deck you build, they are in it, and like there are a lot of times where when you play them it kind of sparks a turn, or if you Misties into one of them it sparks the rest of your turn.
Right.
Like especially during that mid game when you're just trying to burn, you don't want to Colress, you don't want to N, you don't want to copycat, they have low cards, like...
I mean, I'll definitely agree with you that... I mean, I don't even know if I'd agree with you. Like, I think N and Rockets are... maybe not in this format.
Because see, the thing is, N, Colress, Rockets, Copycat, all the other, like, busted draw supporters that are in every single deck depend on something else. You don't want to end your opponent when they have low cards. You don't want to end yourself late game when you have no draw. If there's not a lot of Pokemon on the field, Colress isn't going to work. Copycat depends on your opponent's hand size. Professor Juniper and Sycamore are the only true ones that, no matter when you play them, have the same effect.
Okay, that's fair.
So,
I don't know if I would put mine as high as 2, but I'd maybe bump it up a few slots. I don't know.
I think yours at 9 is really low. I think it's a top 5 combo no matter what.
Okay.
So, but then again, I do see what you mean. Lysander and Guzma are very important. That's a top 3, top 4 card.
I mean, I probably should have just grouped mine like Lysander and Guzma together too, but whatever.
I just think it's really, really high. Like, it's the thing about Lysander and Guzma, it's not one of those ones where you can Porygon 2 and use 2 of them the same turn. Like, I can imagine, like, me Porygon 2ing and going Juniper and Sycamore in the same turn if I really need a dig. You're never going to like Lysander and Guzma in the same turn.
I think you've convinced me. I think we can agree that, like, top 5 would be, like, Trump Card, Hex, Juniper/Sycamore, Lysander/Guzma, and then I guess that would be the top 4. Yeah.
Those are the top tiers, yeah.
So I think that's, like, the top tier of supporters, I would say.
Correct. So moving on. Because I only have like 15 minutes left. Maybe 20.
Okay.
Moving on.
So, I see you don't have Collector. I mean, I can kind of see that. I don't know.
I think Collector is a very replaceable card.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's only good in the first like 2 turns of the game.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think I probably overvalued Collector here.
Yeah. I think, don't get me wrong, it's like top 20. I don't know if I put it. I don't think I put it top 10, just because like I said, it is replaceable. It's something that, like, if you didn't want to play both Collector and Rosies, you could be just fine playing Rosies.
Yeah.
So.
I think if you take Collector off my list, the last half of our list is like pretty close. There's just order differences a little bit.
You don't have Marlies and you don't have Iris.
Yeah, and you don't have. What are you missing then?
Teammates. No, I have teammates. Sorry, missing Collector, and then you didn't lump Lysander and Guzma.
Right.
So those are your 2 spots for my Iris and Marlies.
I would probably put, if I lumped Lysander and Guzma, I'd probably say Iris is like 10 for me. So
then, if you took off Collector, could you justify putting Marlies as your 10?
I don't know if it would be Marlies necessarily. It might be like Copycat, if I'm being honest.
Oh my God, no.
No?
It's so dependent on your opponent. So dependent on your opponent.
I mean, could you make an argument for Blacksmith here? Is that a thing?
No,
or is that too specific?
Too specific. I couldn't. I would, let me shout some other ideas out of you based off just, like, total numbers.
I like Iris. I don't necessarily know if I like Marlies in this top 10.
Professor Oak New Theory.
That could maybe just be the 10 right there, honestly.
Karina.
No, I don't think so.
Rosie's Research.
Definitely not that.
AZ or Wally.
No.
Sage's Training, Twins, Lookers. We're starting to get in the... Yeah.
I think at that point it's just Oaks would be like a safe, boring number 10.
I think Oaks would be my, like, 11 after Marlies. I think Marlies is too good in, like, the late game situations where you're forcing your opponent to pick between, like, Junk Arm and Item Finder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, turns where you, like, can't trump card or don't want to trump card.
Yeah.
Like Marlies. So.
Cool. Okay, well, we should move on because I think items might take a while.
Yeah, we'll see. You might be
I
more
don't know.
surprised.
Oh, maybe not.
Yeah. Like I said, I think the only real difference between ours, there's a couple towards the bottom, but the top, Junk Arm Item Finder is a clear number 1.
Yeah, not even close.
Yeah, no, it's that, and then, like, literally like everything else. Like, it's number 1. I think I might have goofed on my Oak. I think I could be... like, it's funny, we switched Oak and Juniper.
You mean Oak and Computer Search?
Yeah, Oak and Computer Search, yeah. 2 and 5.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. You have Scoop Up and Imposter Oaks, and I have the 2 energy removals. You also have Verse Seeker. I've kind of... Maybe I should... I think maybe Verse Seeker instead of Swoop. I'm not sure.
I have Swoop and you have... I have Scoop Up and you have Swoop.
Yeah.
So, like, that argument is fun.
I think Swoop is really good because it lets you, like, evolve the basic the turn you do it. which is in a lot of situations is very relevant. But I don't know, Scoop Up also has a lot of cool uses too. I don't know, that's hard to say.
I think it's, sometimes we use Swoop as kind of a way to get something off your bench. But I like Scoop Up as a way to like reuse Uxie and Lapras because they're such good cards. And they're also bench savers. Don't get me wrong, I think Swoop is top 15. Like, it's one of those ones that I would put pretty close to being next. But,
I feel like I probably should have had Verse Seeker on this list too, actually.
Yeah, because it's the only way to reuse supporters.
Yeah.
So I definitely think Versus Seeker needs to go top 5.
Can you tell me why you didn't feel like the energy removals were good enough?
There's a lot of decks that can get around them. A lot of decks that can get around them. Any sort of energy rain deck, as long as you don't get removaled and hexed in the same turn, right? But then that's an argument for hex again, to be number 1. And that's not an argument for removal and super energy removal. Those are only good against energy rain decks because of hex, not because of the cards themselves. So those get around them. Single energy attachment decks, stuff is like anything with Abominable, Jump Bluff, Empoleon, any sort of the evolution decks that can all 1 energy attach. I think that in the U150, because those cards are so powerful, there are so many ways that people have built to get around them.
Do you think, is there a world then where you think these two could be taken off the Elite Four? Energy removal and super energy removal?
No, because then that's too busted. Because it's one of those weird tipping points, because then you can have turns where you go super energy removal, junk arm super energy removal, item fighter super energy removal, and then any deck that literally can't deal with those cards are unplayable.
I mean, any deck that couldn't deal with that anyway wouldn't have that many energies on the board in the first place, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, you said, like, for instance, let's look at, like, Rainbow Road, right? That's a deck that gets energies out by attacking. That deck would just cripple if you could play 3 super energy removals in a turn. Now, inherently, decks that can't deal with energy removal and super energy removal just naturally are lower tier because of these cards. That's why. Decks that can deal with them don't have to worry about 2 of the cards in your opponent's deck. So I think
that's fair.
Let's think about the top like 3 or 4 decks. You have Kingdra, 1 energy attachment. Jump Bluff, 1 energy attachment. Magnezone, energy rain. Tool Drop with Dimension Valley, it's a 1 energy attachment.
Those are all decks that don't really care about energy removal that much.
Yeah, they're top 4 decks. What's 5? 5. I mean, we put Blastoise in the top 8. That's an energy rainer. I know, it's stupid. Dusknoir is a top 8 deck. It's actually legitimately now a top 8 deck. It's a finalist there.
You also have to think about all the blacksmith decks that are really good. Don't care about it much either.
Nope. So. Arcanine and Raikou Entei, both blacksmith.
Yeah, they don't care about it either.
So that's why I don't put them top 10. But it's one of those weird situations. Like I said, they become no longer an Elite Four. Now it's decks that already couldn't deal with them or struggled to deal with them just aren't playable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why I don't put them there. I think they're top 20, but no. So we have our top 6 is like virtually the same except for the Versus Seeker. We both have Lux Ball. Both a Gust of Wind on there. The only other one to talk about is my number 10.
Imposter Oak's Invention.
It's the same reason as Hex. It can single-handedly win games without any help.
Imposter Oak's Invention is just like a very low risk, high reward kind of thing. Like most of the time it's not going to change very much, but then like every now and then you're going to prize something super important and it'll just like win you the game.
Yep.
But most of the time when you play, you're not going to feel that much of an effect. I don't feel like.
But I still think it's worth a spot in your 100.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I definitely think it's worth a spot. But
right.
Is it top 10? Yeah.
I think it is just because it doesn't need anything else to make it work.
I mean, it's only good against decks that rely on like one very specific like attacker, like.
Well, not necessarily, because how many times have like I think it's like once in every like 4 to 5 games where you're like, ugh, it's prized, right?
Right.
That happens so frequently. Like we should have literally like keep a tracker on that because I think it's once every 4 to 5 games where you say, wow, your Imposter Oak's Invention beat me, and it's a one of throw-in card that you just play when you get in your hand, right? Like, It's stupid good. Like I think it's deserving of top 10 because it's in, I think, every single deck. Like it needs to be played. I think people who don't play it are stupid. Just straight up.
Stupid.
Like, it's a good fucking card.
Okay, let's move on. I don't think the last three categories I don't think are going to be very contentious.
No. Top 5 is the same. We switched Forest and Verbank. I think.
Okay, so yeah, the tier 1 here is very obviously like, well, tier S is very obviously just Broken Time Space, Skyfield.
Well, I think
and
I think Broken Time Space is even in a league of its own outside of Skyfield.
Yeah.
I think it goes Broken Time Space like S tier, Skyfield tier 1, and then like everything else, and then like the next 3, and then everything else.
Yeah.
I think Verbank gets the nod over Forest just because Forest is only good for grass decks, and Verbank is like you have a legitimate, like if you play Laser, you have a reason to play Verbank.
According to your stats, which one is played more? I know that's not a thing, but I'm just curious now.
I believe it's Verbank. Let me check.
It's probably Verbank.
Psych! Forest is played in 8, Verbank is played in 6.
Yeah. I don't know.
But then again,
they're both like close. It's
but
whatever.
Then if you want to use that as your argument, Scorched Earth is played in 12.
Oh well.
So it's the 4th most played deck is Scorched Earth.
Yeah.
Behind BTS obviously, then Skyfield, then D Valley. D Valley's in 14 and Scorched Earth is in 12.
I mean, the only actual difference we have is
Those two.
Snowpoint and Stark, right?
Snowpoint and Stark versus Magma Base and Parallel.
Yeah.
I don't think Parallel belongs on the top 8. I think that's the only one
I would agree with that.
That's the only one I feel strongly about. Because, like, what are you realistically using it for? Like, to limit your opponent? Cool, they're going to, like, Windstorm. If you limit your opponent, they're going to be like, oh, my Uxie's in the discard, I guess, whatever. Like,
no, sorry, I'm going to go back now, but do you think there's an argument for Windstorm top 10 items? I didn't even think about that.
There's an argument for it. I don't know if that would be... I think the other ones are just, like, way more impactful. Like, there are a very good amount of games where, like, Windstorm is, like you play it and you're like, okay. Like, it's in my hand and I'm about to Juniper, might as well, like, get rid of your, like... might as well get rid of your Pokemon contest tool. Like, whatever.
Okay, but yeah, the stadiums are, like... It's, like, the top 5, and then, like, after that, it's just, like, whatever.
It's really, like, Broken Time Space and Skyfield are, like, the only two that are in, like, a fat amount of decks. And then everything else.
So.
Oh, almost half. Skyfield's in 29, so it's in almost half the decks we built.
Yeah, for sure.
And BTS is in 55 of them, so.
Yep.
Tools. I think you're under... I think the only argument here, because most of the rest of this stuff is just like fart out whatever, right? I think the fact of like number 10 Hard Charm versus Bursting Balloon, they both are countered by Windstorm, like whatever.
Yeah.
Like, or by not attacking, like fart, like whatever. I think the only real actual discussion topic here is Muscle Band versus Floatstone.
I mean they're I don't know. I think they're both just like tier S. It's like I don't think that we need to argue about it. I think they're both just like very, very close to being the best, and you know.
I will tell you that well, first of all, the third most played tool card behind Floatstone Muscle Band is actually Experience Share.
Huh.
26.
I mean, we both put that at 6. So.
Yeah, I know. Choice, just because I think we can get challenged. Choice Band is number 4 on the list, and then followed by Fluffy Berry, and then followed by Fighting Fury build. But those 4 in a row, EXP, Choice, Fluffy, and Fighting, go 26, 25, 23, 20.
Right.
And then the other 2 are 61 and 51.
Muscle Band and Floatstone are 61, 51.
Which do you think is which?
I think Floatstone's 61.
No. Oh yeah, Floatstone. Yeah, sorry. Floatstone is 61. Muscle Band is 51.
Yeah, because some decks don't care about the extra damage. So.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the only reason I give the nod to Floatstone, and like.
I think you're right. I think you could probably say Floatstone's number 1.
Just because, like, also the fact of like free retreater, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think the 20 damage is awesome, but there's other ways to get the 20 damage.
I do think Fluffy Berry's limitation of can't be attached to EXs is like knocks it farther than you have it. To be honest,
I think the fact of Fluffy Berry can be put on all your support Pokemon. Like, you throw that on your Claydol, and now you have your Floatstone for your important stuff.
Yeah.
I think
But,
that's
like, if you need to, like, retreat like a dust snore or like a magnezone or something, I don't know. And
no.
you have a
I
fluffy
mean,
bear in your hand, you're gonna cry.
I mean,
Like,
Floatstone's in 61 and Fluffy Berry's in 23, right? Like that's
yeah,
telling as in itself. But I just think, I mean, by that same logic, Choice Band is only good against EXs, right?
that's
And
true, I guess.
so if you're using the EX logic, then like now you have the Floatstone versus Muscle Band argument, but in EX form.
Yeah.
So who knows? I think Rescue Scarf deserves to be higher, but I can see why you'd put it low. Just because the rest of these tools are just like, oh yeah, you just win.
This is kind of the same thing as stadiums. It's like top 4 or 5, and then after that, it's like,
Yeah. Just because like the rest of these are like dependent on what your opponent does. So like
Yeah.
if they just have a windstorm, they're useless.
yeah.
The Fury Belts is like the only other thing, but whatever. I put it way lower because it's only on basics. You know, it's very limiting. But and even on basics in this format, the 10 damage is not going to be that much of a deal.
Yeah.
It makes a Raikou PKT be able to one-shot a Xerneas PKT. It's like the only thing it does. So, woo.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. And then moving on to specials. This is another fart, like, whatever.
It's like double colorless and double rainbow, and then rescue arguably are like the top 3, like very far ahead of the rest of them.
Statistics on this one.
Yeah.
Double colorless at 39, a little over half. And then double rainbow at 15. And then rescue at 9.
Right.
And then rainbow and up are both at 8.
Rainbow ult.
Rainbow and up are both at 8.
Yeah. Our lists are not very, like the top 6 or 7 of our lists are very, very similar here.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate the rest of this list. Like ranking special energy is like the dumbest thing.
Yeah. I mean, my 8, 9, 10 versus your 8, 9, 10, like, I don't know.
I don't even feel like arguing that. Like, whatever. Like, strong energy makes, like, stuff like Crabominable and, like...
Okay, I actually take that back. I think strong energy is 100% should be in the top 10.
The only reason I didn't include it is because it's type specific.
It is, but it's still probably in, what, 5 or 6 maybe?
How many decks is it in?
Yeah.
Strong is in 7.
Okay, so I mean, that's a decent amount. There's a lot of random fighting attackers that use it, so...
Yeah, no, there are. It's higher than Blend and both blends are. Those are 4 and 3, respectively. So, I don't know. Special energy is just kind of weird. Just because, especially if we start actually playing Lost Remover.
Yeah.
Like, which, the tournament that's near your place in a couple months, like, when we go and play there, I'm putting Lost Remover in decks.
I'm playing Jump Left, I think, 100% for that.
Yeah?
I think that's going to be the best deck for beating other random decks that I don't know what they do.
That's an interesting discussion for another day, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Quick top 3 cards in the format. I know we didn't do this list, but if you were to pick top 3 cards, go.
Oh, man. Put me on the spot there, buddy.
I know. It's your hot take of the day.
I think it's just Junk Arm, Item Finder, and then, like, Spiritomb, maybe? I don't know.
I think I put Spiritomb above Junk Armada Runner.
You think Spiritomb is just the best card?
Oh, it's so format defining.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'd be the best card. I think I would make an argument for Hex. For me, I think you and I could both agree that like Spiritomb, Junk Arm, Item Finder are like 1 and 2, whichever way you flip it. And then the third one after that,
maybe it's just Claydol. I don't know.
The third one after that is either Claydol as a top 3, or I think you could argue for Hex or Trump Card or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think number 1, number 2, whichever way you order it, Spiritomb, Junk Arm. Then number 3 is either Claydol or Hex.
Yeah.
And then if you were to throw a 5 in there, I don't know. The 5 would be really hard. Broken Time Space?
Maybe even like Broken Time Space, honestly.
Yeah. Just because it makes so many decks like legitimately possible. And you have those turns where like they Lysin or kill your Claydol, and you're like, Retriever Stretcher, and then they're like, oh.
It's just hilarious how much better Broken Time Space is than almost any other stadium.
No, yeah, that's the most lopsided one. Like, BTS is... This format would be really different without BTS.
Yeah, it would be insane how different this format would be.
Because then you almost have to like play a 2-1 Claydol line so that you can have a second Claydol on your bench so it doesn't get Lysander killed.
Yeah.
Just so
That makes stuff like Jump Left. Well, Jump Left has Forest, I guess, but any stage 2 deck that's just like fast, that just makes things so much worse.
it makes stuff like Crobat impossible.
That's an interesting thought. Like, what would this format look like without Broken Time Space?
I think there'd be a handful of decks that just aren't possible, such as Bronzong.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately,
Crobat.
actually, Bronzong I don't know would be impossible.
Yeah.
Just because like when you go because you have to do the attack on turn 2, right? So if like turn 1 you get 3 Voltorbs on the bench.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it'd be a lot harder.
Yeah, I think the deck gets built way differently in that scenario. I think you have to play like Collector, Bridget, and that sort of thing, and then like go turn 1 Lapis for that, and then.
I mean, that's an interesting thought. Like, if you think Broken Times, maybe it should be banned. I don't know.
No, BTS should not be banned. It's It's the same friggin' argument of Spiritomb. It's so format defining that the moment you take it out, it kills everything.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing. Like I think a card being banned is something where it's not a splashable card, but a card that like you build a deck around it and nothing can beat it. For instance, Trash Lynch Garbodor, right?
Right.
Like that card.
Oh god, that would just be horrifying.
100% deserving of the like insta ban the moment it's released, because like you would play like a 4-1 line, and you just go kill, 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 and that's just like not fun. And so
if that Garb was in format, Tool Drop Garbodor would be like way by far the best deck in the format.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I don't even think you need the other Garb. You just go kill, 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 kill.
Yeah.
Whereas Broken Time Space is in so many decks where like if you took it apart, everything crumples.
I think it is like definitely like my 4th or 5th slot is Broken Time Space though. Yeah. If I had to do like a top 5 of all of them.
Yeah. So Spiritomb, Claydol, Jungle Miner Finder, Hex, and BTS.
Yeah.
Cool. Easy as that. Alrighty. Thanks for watching that little discussion video. Hope you guys liked it. Like, comment, subscribe, and sell out.
Toolbox.
What?
Toolbox.
Toolbox. Oh, yeah, we didn't even talk about Toolbox decks today. So bad. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys.
Yep. Bye.